Today we are going to be talking about latitude and longitude, which I know that if you had Mrs. Lighty last year in fifth grade, she told you all about. So hopefully this is a quick refresher on here. We might do a little bit more in depth this year in sixth grade, but I want to refresh our brains today on the concepts of latitude and longitude and how they affect mapping and geography. So let's start by just really quickly refreshing our brains on two different types of location that you should have learned about before this year. So the first type of location that people use is relative location. And honestly, you probably use relative location more than the other type of location that we'll talk about in a second. But relative location basically describes where a location is in relation to places near it. So imagine I was trying to tell somebody to get to my house. I might say, hey, do you know where Wendy's is at in Port Clinton? They would say yes. Say, okay, if you find Wendy's and you go down the street a little bit and you turn left, my house is right pretty close to there, right? Or you might say, I live between Wendy's and McDonald's. Or you might say, I live on Jefferson Street a little bit past the middle school, right? So we're not giving them an exact spot, but you're using different places and landmarks and directions to try to get someone to that location. So relative location is probably actually the more popular type of location in just general speaking. And then the other type of location is called absolute location. Absolute location, you are in an exact spot on Earth. This can either be an address or it can be a latitude and longitude coordinates. So if I'm finding a spot in the world, I'm probably going to use latitude and longitude to get someone to an exact spot. So I can get their latitude and their longitude, cross them, and get them to an exact point. Or if I am in the United States and I'm going on a road trip and I want to go to a specific hotel, then I'm probably going to want the address of that hotel so I can get there using my GPS or whatever tool I have. So absolute location is exact spots. Relative location, you're kind of getting them to a general area, but you're using different things that they might know in relation to that specific location. So let's practice that a little bit here. I'm going to read an example of. Actually, let me just quickly show you a couple examples first. So if I was doing relative location again, Johnny lives 3 streets down from Wendy's. But if I want to know Johnny's exact spot, Johnny lives at 423 East Jefferson Street, Port Clinton, Ohio, 43452. You can see the difference there. Relative location gives a general idea. Absolute is giving me exact. So now I want you to try a couple on your own here. First one, Avery lives at 1236 Superior Street in Rossford, Ohio, 43460. Is that absolute or relative location? Hopefully you said absolute location because we are given an exact address there. Second one, Stephen lives 6 streets west of Timothy. Stephen lives 6 streets west of Timothy. For that one, hopefully you said relative location because even though they're giving us how many streets exactly, we don't know exactly where on the street. We don't really know where Timothy lives, so that's kind of a relative location. And then the last one. The Statue of Liberty is located at 40.6892 degrees north, 74.0445 degrees west. Is that going to be absolute or relative? Well, that one's definitely an absolute location because I'm giving you an exact coordinate using latitude and longitude, so that's going to be absolute location. So when we're thinking about absolute and relative location, when we're talking about latitude and longitude, we're mostly talking about exact points on Earth or absolute location in this case here. So let's refresh our brains. Parallels of latitude first. Okay, so a lot of times you might call these latitude lines parallel because they are lines that never cross. And if you see here, these are lines that go around the Earth and they wrap around and they are never going to cross. And there's equal distance between each latitude line, right? So parallels of latitude are imaginary circles that run around the Earth parallel to the equator. Latitude lines are equal distance apart. So when we're talking about latitude lines, we are talking about these side-to-side lines that go around the Earth. The meridians of longitude are kind of the opposite lines. So longitude lines are going to go up and down. They're going to start at the North Pole and end at the South Pole, and they're going to be kind of crossing through here, crossing and intersecting each other, kind of like an orange would, right? So meridians of longitude are imaginary half circles that run between the North and the South Pole. So longitude lines are going to be up and down, vertical lines. So when I'm looking at latitude lines are going to split the world this way, and they are going to cut across the Earth horizontally, right? Which is going to be this way, side to side. So latitude describes location on Earth's surface in relation to the equator. So the equator is our major line of latitude right here. So we see the equator is a line of latitude at 0 degrees. And then I'm either going to go north of the equator using these latitude lines, or I'm going to go south of the equator using these latitude lines, right? So latitude is going to measure north and south of the equator. So if I have 30 degrees north, that means I'm 30 degrees above the equator. Or if I have 60 degrees south, that means I'm 60 degrees below the equator. So latitudes north and south of the equator. And then if you notice, the equator is at 0 degrees latitude. It's not north or south. It's exactly halfway. So the equator is our halfway point at 0 degrees. Longitude works the opposite way. So the prime meridian now is our middle line, and the prime meridian is 0 degrees longitude. So then when we're working from the prime meridian, you are either going to go west or east of the prime meridian in relation to it. So longitude describes locations on Earth's surface in relation to the prime meridian. So I'm either going to work my way east this way, or I'm going to work my way west from the prime meridian that way. And that is how I determine longitude. So longitude lines measure distance east and west of the prime meridian. Okay, so how do I write latitude and longitude? So we know that our latitude lines are going to measure north and south of the equator. So all I have to do is if I have a certain point, I see that this one's right on 30 degrees north, I am going to know that point B is 30 degrees north of the equator, so I would just write 30 degrees sign north. Okay, and you see letter A, they actually did for you. Point A is located at 15 degrees south. They said 15 because they know that halfway between 0 and 30, because these are all equal from each other, this is going to be 15 because it's exactly halfway. So sometimes you have to do a little bit of math and figure out what the halfway point is between two lines. Let's go over on this side. So now I'm looking at longitude lines, either degrees east and degrees west. So they showed us location C here. Location C is located at 60 degrees east longitude. I see that. You have to be careful on longitude because a lot of times longitude is going to curve because that's more realistic because the Earth is round. So if I see that 60 degrees east line and I follow it up, I see that the C point goes right through that line and it'll eventually go up here to the North Pole. So now I want you to look at point D on your own here. So I have my cursor right now on point D, and I want you to tell me what is the longitude of point D? What is the longitude of point D? And you're going to have to look at the two longitude lines that it's between. Okay, hopefully you said 45 degrees west here because I see that 30 degrees west is labeled and I see that 60 degrees west is labeled and I see that point D is right halfway between those two lines. So if there's 30 degrees between these two, that means halfway is going to be 15. So 30 plus 15 is 45 degrees west. It's okay if you missed it. You might need a little bit of practice and refresher with these, but you'll get better at it, I promise, as you go. Okay, so then the whole point of latitude and longitude is to be able to put them together where they cross and intersect on a grid. So a grid is formed when the latitude and longitude lines intersect with each other. So you can see all of these red lines here. We have our latitude lines going this way, and then we have our longitude lines going up and down. And when those cross together, we see that they kind of form a grid here. So if you ever played Battleship before, it's kind of like a battleship grid. So when latitude longitude lines cross, that means it's a coordinate. So if I was looking right here, for example, where my white cursor is, that is going to be 40 degrees north, 40 degrees east, because that is where those two lines cross. Or if I was down here, this is 35 degrees north and 30 degrees east because they cross together there. And if I'm at a point that's between those lines, that's when I have to estimate a little bit and kind of give a good idea. So I see that there's 5 degrees difference between these two latitude lines. I see there's 5 degrees difference between longitude lines. So then I would just have to make a good estimate. So a couple examples here. We see the Turkey's capital city of Ankara, right here, this little star, is located at 39 degrees north, 32 degrees east. And how they figured that out is they saw that that star was almost touching that 40 degrees line, but not quite. So they're going to say 39. So it was almost there. And then over here, I see that the star is between 30 and 35, but a little bit closer to 30. So 32 degrees east would be a good estimation there. Here's another one. The capital city of Baghdad, I'm going to move myself out of the way here. Right here, we see that line coming across. Our Baghdad line is below 35, so it has to be smaller, but it's pretty close. So we're going to go 33 degrees north. And then our longitude line is almost to that 45, but not quite there. So they're going to go with 44 degrees east. So that's kind of how we use these grids to help us find locations. All right, guys. Hopefully you followed along okay today. I want to look at this map as our last thing here. Just practice a couple locations on your own. I'm going to do a couple for you. There's not going to be, I'm only going to have one question here at the end. But if I was looking at a letter here, we always want to look at our latitude first, and then we want to look up here at our longitude. So let's just do letter A first. So I see that letter A goes over here to 45. Well, I know that letter A is then 45 degrees north of the equator because that goes right there. And then if I wanted to find the longitude of letter A, all I have to do is follow that curved line back to where it hits right there. So I see that letter A is at 45 degrees north and 120 degrees west. I want you to try letter D. Okay, try letter D on your own. If you did this correctly, you are going to hopefully find that letter D goes out here to 60 degrees north because we are above the equator, and it's going to go over here to 90 degrees east because we are east of that prime meridian. So the correct answer there should have been 60 degrees north, 90 degrees east. Okay, we're going to practice a few more of these tomorrow. Please rewatch this video if you have any trouble, or get a hold of me and we can work through some together on Google Meet. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Please contact me if you have questions because I know latitude longitude could get a little confusing. Have a good day, everybody.